What's the largest amount of money that you've ever spent on a single pair of running shoes? Was it a cool 160 for a pair of Asics Nimbus? Maybe an elevated 280 for some Hoka Cielo X1s? Or even an ambitious 300 for a pair of Nike Alphafly 3s? Now, if you said yes to any of those, I regretfully have you beat.
Average.
And this isn't a weird brag or flex. I remember feeling sick to my stomach as I walked home from the Adidas store, bag in hand, $724 less rich after making an impulse decision that, in reality, wasn't that impulsive at all. See, all year, I've been waiting to test out what people call the best shoe of 2024, the Adidas Adios Pro Evo 1. And 12 hours before the biggest race of my season, lo and behold, a few pairs appeared at a shopping mall close to me. So what did I do? I bought a pair. And here they are, the Pro Evo ones. And now I did a half marathon in them, and I'm ready to give this shoe my full and honest review. So let's dig in. A little background about what these are before we get into the review. So the Pro Evo ones first made their public appearance in the fall of 2023. When Ethiopian marathoner Tigist Assefa wore them to set what was then a women's world record in the marathons. Then in the spring, Adidas released 500 pairs to the public and ambitiously priced them at $500 USD. They sold out instantly. It's around that time that we found out exactly what they were. Not a super shoe, but a Hypershoe. A racing sneaker that, on paper, has no match. They weigh in at 4.9 ounces, or roughly half the weight of any other modern-day racing shoe. They have a paper-thin translucent upper, a treadless outsole smooth like a bowling shoe, and get this, no carbon plate, only small carbon rods tucked between two layers of extra light foam. So it's basically foam, paper, and laces. A lot of people are calling it the shoe of the future, and then others grumble about the price point. My colleague Michael Doyle called it the most appalling running shoe in recent memory, but a part of me just thinks he's jealous because I snagged the last pair in Toronto. So back to the Adidas store. It's October 19th, about 12 hours before my main race of the year, which is a half marathon. And then a friend of mine texts me to tell me that there's a pair of Pro Evo 1s at the mall in downtown Toronto. And that's big news because the Evos are always sold out. So I get on my bike and I go downtown. I walk into the store, I see the pair of shoes, I put them on, and I try them out in my civilian clothing. I run on their treadmill, and then decide to buy the things. And then the next morning, I laced them up for race day. So here's how that went. So the weirdness began right at the start line. Other runners turned around, looked at me, and said things like, "You got them?" Or, "Where did you find them?" Or, "Are you sure this was a good idea to buy them?" And I realized right away that I was wearing the closest thing to a status symbol that exists in distance running. And then the race begins, and I feel like I'm defying physics. The Evos weigh next to nothing. They're super responsive, and they explode off the ground. And because they barely have any carbon in them, they're not as hard as most other carbon-plated shoes. It's like if someone took your favorite training shoe, made it 10 times more responsive, and cut its weight in half. In fact, the last time I ran in shoes that light was back in my minimalism era. Don't recommend. I had this pair of Mizuno Wave Universe 5s that weighed about 3 ounces and had absolutely zero cushioning. I liked them for the weight, but they had no power to them. This was like a racing flat, but with a bunch of power. And the race itself, meanwhile, is going super well. So my goal is to run 66 minutes for the half marathon, and I split 5K, 10K, 15K, all on pace. And then when the monkey began to climb onto my back at 19K, it's almost like these shoes prevented me from falling back onto my heels, instead forcing me onto my midfoot and toes and rocking me forward until the finish. I even mustered a sprint at the end that helped me hit my goal time. So I'm not exaggerating when I say that I've never worn a shoe this fast. In terms of power by ounce, it's off the charts. So immediately after the race, I take the shoe off, put it in my bag, and I obviously haven't worn it since. I'm actually a little bit worried about what happens now. So as soon as this Pro Evo 1 came out, there was a rumor that it was only good for one race. The Adidas people chalked it up to a bit of a PR error, and we actually met one of the product developers of this shoe down in Boston during the Boston Marathon, and he told us that the one and done shoe was a myth, and that the Pro Evo ones actually were good for 200 or even 250 miles. So time will tell what's true, but I hope that it carries me for more than just one race. So one more thing that I can't confirm or deny. Some people have criticized the bottom of this shoe, which as you see is treadless and super smooth, as being not great in the rain or on wet terrain. Now, I've only worn it the one time. I was lucky because I had a sunny day, so I can't really attest to whether or not it was good in the rain, but if I find out more, I will follow up in this video. A pleasant surprise during the race also was that I thought these shoes would be less comfortable. The top isn't necessarily smooth. It's actually a little bit rough when you feel it, but my feet were totally fine. No blisters, no problems. It's actually quite comfortable of a shoe. So I'll say it one more time. I think the Pro Evo ones are the best road racing shoe in the world. But given their price point, are they worth the buy? I think in most cases, no. There's one instance where I actually think you should stretch for these shoes, and that's when you're already convinced that you're going to have the race of your life. That was my mindset on Sunday. I knew the weather was going to be perfect. I knew the course was fast. I knew that I'd have a metronomic pace group to chase, and I knew that I was in the best shape of my life. It's those factors all together that made me stretch for the shoes. I would not have bought them for an early season race. I would not have bought them when coming back from injury, because the difference between these shoes and other top racing shoes exists, but it's small. And so if you didn't buy these and you went for, I don't know, plain old Alpha Flies, nobody would blame you. But if you're looking for a special day and you have $600 to spend, or $700 if you're Canadian, go for it. Okay, and I'd like to end this video with an Easter egg for my colleague, Michael Doyle, who hasn't seen this video before publication. Michael, you've been a good sounding board for me pre and post race about training, content, everything. And for that, I'd like you to have these shoes. I'm just kidding. You're not getting these.